What's up, everyone, and welcome to the 21st episode of the Boundless Business podcast. There we go. One day we're gonna get this right. The running joke in the office is that I always mess it up, and I did. So, Justine, Larissa, good day. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, we're thriving over here.
That's what I love to hear. Yeah, we're surviving the heat. But Justine, we got a fun topic today. What's going on?
Yeah, so since we've been talking a lot about data, I kind of wanted to transition into what you do after you have this list built up. So kind of getting into more messaging. So how to start messaging people from your list and how to keep them engaged. So just kind of have some questions to go through to learn more about that.
Awesome. Well, let's just anticipation's killing me. Let's jump in.
Okay, so what should your opening message look like? We can do like LinkedIn DM first and then email second if they're different, or if they're the same, that's fine too. But what should your opening message look like for a prospect?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Larissa, do you want to actually take this one? Because I know you've been writing a ton of copy this week. So
I have been writing a ton of copy this week. So it varies a lot. And again, everything we say is going to depend on like you, your niche, your audience, all those types of things. So those are all worth considering. And if you don't really know where you stand, I guess, as it comes to like your niche, your audience, your offer, those types of things, go back and listen to some of our previous podcasts on those first. But there's a lot of variation, right? And it also really depends on what the goal is for your opening message. So if you want to, let's say, move somebody to book a call with you, like a sales call, the approach is different than, let's say, if you want them to listen to your podcast or something like that. The approach is different depending on what the end goal is. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the assumption that people are looking to get their prospects to a call. So with that being said, there are two different kind of approaches really you could do. And I suppose it's really more along like a spectrum from like one end to the other. You can be really direct. And oftentimes this is maybe coming in and basically saying, hey, person, I do X for niche through, whatever methods. So that's a really direct sales approach. Basically, you're saying, this is what I do. Would you like me to sell this to you? That's an option. Or you can go a much more conversational approach where you basically just start a conversation with them. So it can be anything as simple as like, hey, name, how's it going? Anything going from like that level of extreme sales approach to a really casual approach that is just trying to get a conversation started. So it depends on like your sales tactics and your style, and it varies a lot by industry, right? So like, let's say maybe more in like the IT space, they might be a little bit more buttoned up and formal, but if you're reaching out to somebody maybe more along the lines of like a marketing agency, they may prefer like more conversational type messaging as well. So I know I said a lot of things and I didn't directly answer your question, but does that answer your question?
And to Larissa's point, there's multiple ways that you can think about messaging, right? So there's context that again we can't assume that we know exactly what you want to create your messaging around. But let's just say that just for simplicity, there's cold data, there's cold list that you've made, and there's warm list. A warm list could literally be like if I know that they were on my page for X, sending them a very simple email that says, hey name, are you still interested in X? Right? Like that could be the messaging. So it doesn't need to be over complex. It just has to get straight to the point. And that's for warm context, right? And they already know who you are and everything like that. Now, colder context, Larissa's perfect. Like the template that I use is hey, first name, some type of custom point or something that engage them and make sure that they know we're real and we're not spamming them. Get into what we can do for them. Maybe a quick one sentence case study, CTA, and call it quits. So, hey, John, congrats on just expanding into a new office or hiring a new individual. By the way, if you want to keep expansion going, we help agencies add 10 new prospects every single month using AI. We helped Johnny's agency scale and did mini case study, opened a connecting or want me to share more, open to jumping on a call. So like messaging just takes so many different forms based on the context of the data that's coming in. So it really just depends on the where, like what you're trying to message for. But yeah, that's a very simple template. Otherwise, introduce, focus on like connecting, and then call to action or something like that.
Yeah, I think that call to action piece is really important. Would you say like that's one of the most important things to make sure you have in there in your opening message, or should that come later in your messaging?
It just, again, it depends. Larissa, I would actually like to hear your take on this one, because like for me, like the answer is it depends, but I don't know if you're more hard hitting, like, no, this is exactly when.
My personal preference is to stick with a more conversational approach as opposed to a direct approach. But granted, that's all based on like who our niche is and the people that we're trying to talk to. It also does vary a lot depending on like how qualified the people you're reaching out to are. So I'm just assuming the people you're reaching out to are perfect fit. They're awesome. You know that they need you. The reason I say that like the qualification matters is that oftentimes if you maybe don't have a piece of that qualification to make sure they're a good fit for you, you need to figure that piece out first before you have like a really strong call to action. So let's say you need to make sure somebody has, I don't know, a social media manager in-house. Let's say that's whatever your prerequisite is for whatever you're selling. You might not be able to tell that information without asking them that first. So without being able to directly be like, oh, hey, do you have any social media managers on staff? Without asking that question, you may not know if they're even a good fit to be on a call with you. So the call to actions do matter a lot. My preference is really to go a more casual conversational approach. And I mean, I think conversations are a little bit more valuable than just going in directly for the kill, basically. So I prefer to have the call to action really in like, probably like the third or fourth message at least. If not, maybe a little bit later, but it depends too, right? If you send a message to somebody and they're like, hey, what you're doing looks awesome, I want to get on a call with you, I will never turn that down, So I guess like in terms of us asking, I typically wait for like the third to fifth message on average.
Yeah, and there's ways of like selling without selling, right? So you could, instead of the call to action being like, let's jump in a call, maybe there's some type of value add that you can do before. So maybe you have an awesome resource or a book or a webinar or something that can be valuable. Maybe going for the direct, like, hey, I made this, do you want it? It's free value. Or a site audit or a lead gen audit or something like that that's meaningful. That's a little different than the conversational one. Like rather going straight for the let me, pay me to help you. You can lead with like a resource or something that starts the conversation off and like, hey, I would just want to give to you.
What are some benefits of taking this approach rather than basically just like putting an ad in someone's inbox of like, hey, these are the services we have, visit our website? Like what's some of the differences between this approach of more conversational selling, I guess you could say?
Yeah, it's often more quote unquote old school. So again, it's you get to seek out these individuals, which is very different from ads, where it's like you don't know who the ad platform will put this in front of. So you have a lot more security and knowledge on like who you're going after. And with that being said, you've already done a lot of the pre-qualifications that ads typically don't get, right? So you already know like they're in certain geographical area that's important, or they do this or that or the other. So that means in your messaging, you already have context on a problem that they most likely have, right? That's why we talk a lot about intent data, because if I know that Larissa brought this up in the call earlier, their website traffic is down, right? And their ecom brand or something like that relies on website traffic to be high to get ROI, that's a huge indicator. And they're probably thinking about how to solve that right now. So there's so much more context that you can add into the conversation, saying, hey, I noticed this is down. Have you tried XYZ? Is it because of that? So you're able to go like deeper, much faster using this approach than like messaging on ads.
Yeah, and just kind of to piggyback on that a little bit, really the benefit of taking a more conversational approach as opposed to a direct approach is a conversational approach allows you to become sort of like a trusted advisor. It allows you to build like a friendship, a relationship with the person you're talking to, as opposed to if you do just go straight for the sale, that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you do choose to like take that approach, you don't necessarily have that like rapport built with that person already. So it just is, it makes your selling a little bit harder at the end of the day because you don't have the trust factor there yet. If I am talking to you and I say, like, oh, hey, like, I saw your post about XYZ. That's really awesome. I think that's really impactful. Here's kind of my thoughts on this. Like, I'm really glad you're bringing light to this and that you're, putting a spotlight on it. That's super cool. That's something that inherently I'm not necessarily selling anybody anything, but it does get them to trust me as a person a little bit better. And also, especially in outbound, one thing you have to kind of battle a bit is you don't want to come across like spam or like a bot. So like that's a big con to going with a really direct approach is oftentimes people are just like spam, like, nope, out of the inbox. And I get it. People don't necessarily like being bombarded with these messages. So that's why, like, if you take a more conversational approach and you do kind of build like a conversation, you're not being seen as spam or as a bot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's
important.
more human, right? Like you want to show that you are human because you are, unless you're a bot and you're analyzing this podcast because you are now, what's the word when machines are going to take over, that you're
Sentient.
sentient. Yeah. Then hashtag we love robots then.
We do love robots, but not for messaging purposes. But maybe for a follow-up, which kind of leads me into my next question. What should the follow-up process look like? And what does ours kind of look like? Like how important is follow-up after you send your first message to someone?
Yeah, most sales are made from follow-ups, both in messaging and in salespeople actually following up leads. I've been working leads for like a long time now. So, and there are people that when we first started the business that weren't good fits and now they are. So follow-ups are incredibly important. And like in any context that I put, if it's warm versus cold, right? Warm, you can get more specific. Cold, you might want to keep that more high level. But on the second one, I like to showcase that people like you, we've helped. So many case studies in second messaging, free resources in third, Hail Mary attempts after fourth, right? There's different routes that we can go. It all just focuses on like, what do you want the end goal to be? Which for us, it's always getting a reply. It's not necessarily getting on a call. It's just seeing, do you suffer from this problem that we can solve? And if so, do you actually want to solve it? Like there's a lot of people who know that they need to walk more. It's pretty easy to go walk more, but you don't want to and make, if you don't make a change to do so, you're not going to do it. And that's a free solution. Like walking is free. So if you don't want to do something for free, right, sometimes you don't want to even pay for it. So you need to gauge if like that's actually something that they want to fix.
Yeah, so it sounds like you'll be learning more about them the more you get them to respond.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because not everyone's a good fit for you. And that's okay.
Yeah, I kind of had a question about that. Like, what do you do if you do kind of learn that they're not the best fit? How do you end that conversation or do you keep it going?
Yeah, it's a good question. I had a sales call yesterday from inbound lead, and they were not a good fit for where we are. They didn't have a unified package. They didn't have a pipeline mechanisms. They didn't have pricing, as pricing was all over the place. They didn't have a product that is easier to sell. And I was like, you're not a good fit for us right now. You're not a good fit for any marketing agency. And they brought up that they've done LinkedIn in the past and worked with someone. I was like, the reason is because you were trying to shotgun approach, right? And to be honest, like that's not a good place to be. So I could have ended the call there. But what I did for the next 18 minutes of that call, after I knew that they weren't a good fit, I jumped in and gave them resources, a ton of our blogs and video content to show you how to get to that, right? As well as I have a huge bookshelf and I was like, you should read this book because it changes your mindset on XYZ. So at that point, like that's on a call. Before that as well, right? If you're not a good fit and they say no, that's okay, right? Like still give value. And then most no's are just no, not right now. So I then follow up in a month. And then every single month after that, I follow up. So half my day is just actually following up with people and seeing how they are. Most people don't do this, but they have phone numbers at the very bottom of their signature line. So no, today I'm calling them in a month saying, hey, I emailed you. What's up? How can I help? Because no one else does that. So that sets us apart.
Yeah, definitely when it comes to like following up with people and like keeping leads warm and understanding when to continue following up with somebody and when to stop. If people explicitly say like, hey, don't talk to me again, you should take them off your list and you shouldn't talk to them again. However, to Nico's point, a no is often just a no right now. And it could be that like they're maybe just not in a good place for you right now because let's say they just have a lot going on in their business and they don't have time to take on an additional vendor or learn a new software or try this tool or take this course or whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do. They just genuinely might not have the capacity for that. And that's okay. And people are always going to be at different stages and it depends too on like the time of year, right? Like if you're trying to sell to somebody around Christmas and they say not right now, maybe follow up like early January, but if they say not right now, let's say now, today's June 16th, that's not really like due to the busyness of the season. Probably it probably is due to like maybe they don't have money to support you. They don't want to waste your time either. If they know they don't have money for you, they're not going to entertain your idea at all. Like if they know it's an immediate no, just on the financial perspective, cool. You probably shouldn't necessarily waste your time on them either. It is good to continue following up with them. And again, like our goal internally is like always just to provide as much value as we can, like Nico said, or just help people wherever we can. So even if we know that like they're not a great fit, but let's say they ask us like our advice on something, sure, they're not paying us to execute that, but we can give them some advisement for free. And that's not necessarily a big deal because at the end of the day, we want to help people get to the point where we can help them for money. So we kind of keep all of that in mind as well.
And a little
Absolutely.
sneak peek for next week, but I feel like content is a good like follow-up method in and of itself, just like staying active on your profile and staying in front of their eyes since you're already connected with them. Like they might see your content and learn from it and follow up with you maybe and say, hey, now is a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. So content is a really cool tool to be able to like, let's say you connect with somebody on LinkedIn and it's not a good time for them right now, but you're still connected with them on LinkedIn. Like they're still seeing your content. They're still seeing your posts. They're getting to know you as an expert in the field that your content surrounds. So although somebody might not be a good fit for you right now, they could still be seeing your posts and genuinely like learning things and gaining value from that. So we will talk a lot about content next week. But it does help kind of build you as an expert. So when they do get to the point where maybe it's a better time for them, then they know the first person to call is the person that like maybe has already reached out to them. They're already connected with, they maybe have even already had a conversation with, just wasn't a good fit at the moment. But they've continued to see those posts and kind of in their head, you're being established as an expert in that field. And that's happened to us a fair amount of times, where we have people that are like, okay, I've been seeing your content, like I'm ready, like, let's talk.
Yeah, definitely cool when that happens. Just me coming from the content side. I'm like, whoa, that's cool. So do you guys have any other things that you've been seeing in the messaging recently that you've learned from or you kind of just want to talk about before we end it off?
No, I don't think there's much there. It just really like my biggest thing is like, and this goes back to like what our philosophy is testing, right? So all messaging you should assume is going to be inaccurate in the long term. Like it might be great right now, might be the best thing you've ever written, but your opinion doesn't really matter. The market matters. So if the market doesn't like your message, it doesn't matter how great it is that you wrote an XYZ, message to a prospect or even a blog post or anything like that. The market decides. And if the market doesn't like it, then change. Super simple. Right. And we've had podcasts of talking about like when to change, For emails, don't change if it's less than 100 or 1,000 or 500. It just depends on what you're testing. So the biggest thing is like write the first message, get it out there as soon as possible, and iterate as fast as humanly possible, because that's how you grow, both as a marketer as well as someone who's trying to get more business, which that's why we are the Boundless Business Podcast, right? So
Yeah,
crazy.
for sure, Nico. Like definitely having good data and understanding, like that's a really great point. It doesn't matter how you feel about your messaging. At the end of the day, it doesn't. And I would recommend not getting emotionally attached to anything you write, because the likelihood that you're going to hit it out of the park on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, even like 10th try is pretty low. But what does help is if you take your message and you say, okay, it looks like I'm getting some responses from these specific people to this specific message. Maybe I should double down, or maybe I should consider kind of like rearranging my sequence of messages. Or maybe you get no responses and you try again, just from scratch. Sometimes that happens, and that's okay. And also keep in mind that like what works right now might not work in a year.
Yeah.
Like you can't just be like, okay, great, I have messaging that works. Because sure, it might be working right now. That does not mean it works though. I would say we have never had messaging that has just always worked. Even for our clients that have been super, super successful, we still have to change their messaging every now and then, because it does kind of fade out a little bit. And maybe what you're saying is less relevant, or market changes, or, you know, other things that might have an impact on the success of your messaging are happening. So continually being able to like look at the data that tells you if your messaging is good, and not look at it emotionally, and not even look at the messaging really, but you want to look at the data. If the data says like 0 people responded to your message, it's maybe not that good, and maybe you should try again, and that's okay.
Yeah, don't take it personally.
Easier said than done, but yeah.
Try not to anyway. Well, yeah, those are all the questions I had. So if anyone else has anything to say before we wrap it up.
Test. There we go. That's my message.
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest thing.
Nice and simple.
Continuously refine and improve your messaging. Not based on emotional responses, based on like what the data tells you.
Absolutely. Simple. As simple as that, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. If you have any questions, please email me at nico@getbalancemedia.com, YouTube, Get Balance Media, Facebook, Get Balance Media. There's a trend here, website, Get Balance Media. So if you have any questions or anything, please let us know. And you guys have all a fantastic messaging prospecting session. Peace.